Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel, and today in this video we'll be covering a Lichess training game I played around 2 months ago. My Lichess rating at the time was 2377, and I'm playing white, and let's take a look at what happened in this game. So in this position, my opponent has just played the move queen to b4, pitting my knight to my queen. Here I simply play the move queen to c2, getting out of the pin, still defending the knight. I have this open file, this queen and rook are doubled. This position is around equal, I would say. So here, my opponent plays king to g7. King to g7 I thought was a little bit of a, subjectively speaking, a little bit of an inaccuracy, although it's still completely drawn. Reason being is now I actually have the move knight to c5. Previously, if the king was on g8, let's say you play something like h6, and here knight to c5, there is a move like rook to e8, which is a bit annoying. And then I could have like a bit of a damaged pawn structure here. However, and only with the move king to g7, I actually now do have knight to c5, because now there is no rook to c8, which is actually what my opponent ended up playing. Rook to c8 here is actually a blunder. The reason is because of the king's positioning on g7. Because now I actually have the move knight takes on e6 with check. So my opponent doesn't actually have time to take my queen, because then I would take the king. So after pawn takes, then I have queen takes on c8, and now I'm up in exchange. So as you can see, that's sort of how quickly things could change. One square with even a random piece like a king in this sort of position could lead to a win for me. Here my opponent played king f7, trying to consolidate. Here I play rook c7 check, bishop to e7. Here I play g3, give my king a little bit of breathing room. I don't want some queen e1 check and then queen takes on f2. For example, if I go back, if I say I play queen to h8, which I do later on to try to get this h7 pawn, then there is like queen to e1 check, king h2, queen takes on f2. These two pawns are a bit weak, although this is still winning. And also combined with low time, this doesn't really look too good. It looks a little bit scary. So going back, instead here, I actually play g3, give myself a little bit of breathing room, because now if queen e1 check, then I simply have king g2, defending this pawn. There's queen e2, but by the time this happens, I believe I have something like queen to d8, for example. And then if you play queen to f3 check, then I simply play king g1. If you go queen to d1, then now I can go king h2, because this queen isn't attacking this pawn right now. And then soon I would have like queen takes on e7, etc. So going back, that's why g3 is really good. In the game, however, after g3, my opponent played h5, trying to play h4 and soften up this kingside structure here. Here, I play queen to h8, tracking down this pawn. Here, my opponent plays h4. And here, I play queen to h7 check. And here, if you go back to the back rank, then I do have some like rook c8, and there is some ladder mate ideas. So my opponent didn't do that. My opponent actually went up, went king f6. I take this pawn on h4. Now there's no chance my opponent gets counterplay against me. Here my opponent goes back to f7. Here the simplest option, considering I have low time, I would notice I would be up 2 pawns. The simplest win for me, having really low time, and the most sort of easiest win to play, would simply just to be trading everything off. Even if this gives back the exchange, it's fine. I have these 2 extra pawns. This is completely winning for me. Instead, I thought there would be some checkmating ideas. So here I play queen h7, queen h5 check, king to f6. Here I play queen h6 check, king f7, and here I play h4. My idea is to try to play h5 and then like queen g6, for example. Here my opponent goes back to d6, and here I play rook back to c1. Better in this position is actually to start off with queen h7 check. If you go to the back rank, there is the ladder mate ideas I mentioned earlier. So if you play, let's say, king to f6, then here I actually have h5. If you take, then I simply have queen to g6 checkmate. This pawn defends e5. King can't go to e7 because that's blocked by the bishop. Going back. So after king f7, h4, queen to d6. Here I play rook back to c1 just to be safe. I am low on time. Bishop to f8, queen to h7 check, king to f6, and here I noticed the idea of liquidating down to a winning king upon endgame with me being up 2 pawns. Queen h5, king to e7, queen h7 check, king of 6, rook to c7. you have to prevent something like rook f7 or queen f7 checkmate. So here bishop e7, and here I just simply liquidate, trade all the pieces, and then I just bring my king in. Here I play king g3. I don't take because I noticed that if you take, then these two pawns are blockaded. You can't play e3 at any point, and black's king has no entry points into the 5th rank. I'm going to play king f4 next so that I can completely stop e3, and then these two pawns can sort of march themselves into promotion. So here my opponent plays king e6. Here I play h5. Obviously, the idea is to push the pawn to become a queen. My opponent comes back to f6. And here I take, and after takes, here I play h6. My idea here is that now these two pawns are sort of independent of each other. If you go here, then I can play g5, and you can't ever take on g5 even if I leave this g5 pawn hanging, because this h6 pawn would run. So for example, in a scenario like this, I don't have to be worried about my opponent taking on g5, because here I simply have h7, and my opponent's king isn't quick enough to get back in time to stop h8 equals queen. So going back here, so here h6, king to f, and then here my opponent plays d4, trying to play d3. Here I just simply take this pawn. After king takes, I play king f4. Now my opponent is definitely not getting an e3, and my opponent is definitely way too far to get back in time to stop h6, h7. So this was a very nice win. It was against a pretty high-rated opponent actually, so I'm really happy with this game. Had some really nice endgame technique, as well as spotting that sort of small little detail with king g7, and I can play knight c5 at that moment because there is knight takes e6 check, winning the exchange and winning the game. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed, and yeah, see y'all next time.